Okay, so here we are again. I know, finally. Uh, didn't really realize till I checked the channel this afternoon that it had been 4 weeks since I've uploaded a video. Apologies for that. I've been completely inundated doing all the repair work to the shop for the damage the shop has incurred, but got most of that out of the way. Um, since we do have the shop back in somewhat of an order, I will be getting the table saw brought over probably Monday. So, to make up for the lost time here, I'm going to start doing daily vids, at least one a day, possibly two a day, just to, as I said, make up for the lost time. But again, since we have the shop up and going, if there's any particular shop work, shop vids, woodworking vids that anyone wants to see, just leave a comment down at the bottom. I will check all the comments daily. Most of you that are familiar with me or that know me, you know that most of my shop tools, my woodworking tools, well, all of my tools, are probably a century old or older, the majority of them. So we will be doing a lot of handcrafted woodworking, that sort of stuff. Planers, draw knives. That will be one video whenever the weather breaks. I do not have a draw knife anymore, so one of our forging videos is going to be making a draw knife. Hopefully the heater is not going to interfere with our audio here. It's the first time I've turned it on tonight, but it's a little after midnight. And the only reason I'm doing this now was because I promised a few people I would get this out today. So I finally had to turn the heater on because it's only 36 degrees in here. I'm basically sitting on the edge of the bed. Got the cell phone rubber banded to the tripod, so not going to be a real good quality video. But we're going to get a little bit into the shot capsules in the rat shot here. So hopefully this comes out okay, but this isn't going to be one of those, well, I don't like it, we can redo it. This is all the shot capsules I have, and I saved this little handful just for y'all. So basically, to get into the, I guess you could say, history of it, the ones we're going to be using tonight, it's the only ones I had. Now, ever since I was a little kid, and I was born in '72, if that tells you anything, these are the capsules we've had. Clear blue, hard plastic capsules, white base plug. And for those that were asking about shot sizes, here's the difference in the 44 and the 38. So you can see quite a bit of shot difference, or excuse me, size difference. Generally, I guess you'd say the store-bought ones, most of those shot sizes, they run 9.5. You don't have a whole lot of space, so the smaller size shot, the more pellets you get. My problem is when you get into that small of a shot size, you've got more pellets, a denser spread, but the pellets are so lightweight they really don't do near as much damage, penetration. They're just not as effective. I tend to load number 6s in mine. I believe that's what I have in my, that's what I have in the 44, not that you can tell by the camera. But this is a number 6. The reason I load the larger size shot pellets is I'm going to get quite a bit less. Also, the larger size the shot, the more airspace you have in between. So not only you're getting less pellets because of the size, you're also kind of getting less pellets because of the airspace in between them because of the way they fit in the capsules. However, the larger size pellets, one number 6 will do about as much good as 5 or 6 7.5s and probably a dozen number 9s. But that all comes down to, basically, you're going to have a box of them. Put you some 6s in them, try them out. Put you some 7.5s in them, try them out. Do a little experimenting. So back to the ones we have today. And as I said, this is what I've been loading with the kid, or since a kid. So the ones we have today are older than I am. This is the old style spear shot capsule. Since I didn't have any others, I kind of broke out the antiques I've been saving since I was a kid. And as I said, these were old when I was a kid, so. But to get into the powder charge here, if I can get the camera to focus. Anyway, this is showing 5 grains of SR 7625 or 5.5 grains of unique. A little bit about the powder charges for these. Let the traffic go by. Whenever we load these, if I'm loading 38 357, even if I'm going to shoot them in a 357, I load them in a 38 case. That way, I'm not stuck with shooting them in just a 357. A lot of people ask, well, why wouldn't you put them in a 357 case, load them up to 357, and you get more power out of them? If you put more powder to them, all you're going to do is you're going to get a lot less effectiveness out of them. Okay, but you want to keep your powder charges down to basically what they recommend. For example, the 44s in the old loads, they were running this at 7.2 grains of unique. Now the recommended load is 6.8 grains, and that's even what the spare manual says. So they dropped the powder charge in the 44s almost a half grain. The reason you don't want to try to load these up in, say, 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum, which you can do, that's fine if that's the cases you have, but stick with the same powder charge. Don't try to up the powder charge to go to a Magnum case. What happens is you get a lot of shot pattern spread. So you really want to keep these down to the recommended loads. Now, speaking of this pattern spread, since we're firing these through pistols with the rifled barrels, what happens is that rifling is going to impart the spin to the shot. Any of y'all have ever fired a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge shot load through a rifled barrel, you know what it does to the pattern. It triple, quadruples the size. The thing we get into with the handguns is the longer the barrel, the more spin that you're going to get imparted to that capsule before it comes out the bore. These work really good. We just tried some out the other day. That's how I actually got into this, was I was loading some for a buddy of mine. And everybody found out and says, oh, we need a video. I'm like, okay, so I saved y'all a handful. But shooting out of his 2-inch barrel, he just bought a little Rhea, wanted him a kit gun, truck gun, boat gun. So we tried him out in his little 2-inch Rhea, and we were actually keeping them pretty much on paper, even out at 15 yards. 2-inch snubby, it's what a lot of people carry in the woods or something like that. 4-inch barrel, these are fine. You start getting into a 6-inch or especially an 8-inch barrel, again, the longer the barrel length, the wider pattern you're going to have. So that's something to be considerate of whenever you're loading these for whatever gun you're loading for. Excuse me. So, that's the basics of that. And to show you how we fill these, basically what I did is I usually just keep all my shot. I've got some 3-pound Folgers, the good plastic heavy-duty coffee cans. I get a bag of shot. I hate dealing with the bags. Dump it in the coffee can. So I'll basically just pour this out a little bit in a little bowl here. So we're going to see how to fill these. Now, this being the 38s, I am using some number 7.5 that I had. And what you have to remember is when you put the shot, basically you just take and simply dip it through. And then we have the plug. So what happens is a lot of people will try to fill it all the way to the top here. Well, you have to remember the way this plug sets in is that plug has to go in as such. So if your shot's all the way up to here, you can't get the plug in. Now, these plugs do have a cup in the bottom of them. That's one thing to notice. However, when you put the shot in there, because we're using, if I can get the camera to focus here, you can see the size, you're going to have some airspace. You can dip it through, stick the plug in, load it up. It's not going to matter. What I tend to do is simply take them, get to where I can see the camera here, and just simply tap it on the table. Then I can put a little bit more in. Tap it on the table. Okay. Now, when we go to seat the plug, you want to make sure that there's no space here, that this is all the way down on that. Well, that won't quite seat, so we simply dump 2 pellets out. And again, this is for those people that just have to have those extra 2 or 3 pellets in. And there we have it. Nah, I got about 1 more in there. Again, this is just showing for those OCD people. And there we go. So, we'll do 1 more here. Really don't think we need to do a half a dozen of them just to show people how to put shot in them, but if you're running something like a number 8 or a 9.5, they're so fine. You basically just dip it through, kind of shake off the top, and stick your plug in it. But now another little trick is when you go to seat the plug, because these have that cup in it, you'll get the shot up around the edges. But if you will give it a little twist, where she's not all the way seated, simply give it a little twist, and that will generally shift the shot around and let you put the base plug on, and now there's no rattle. The base plug is seated all the way down, and she's completely full of shot with no rattle. So that's a good one. Okay, get this out the way. And the odd thing is that, as I said the other day, I was loading these up for a friend of mine, just going to do a handful. I had the press was already set up for 38s, but I was running a tight group load and wad cutter bullets. I was only going to do about a half a dozen or a dozen of these for him, which is about all we had. I think we had about 16, 18 capsules. So instead of resetting all the press and the powder measures and all that, I was simply taking my dipper, which is why my dipper's out here, hand weighing the charges, and just doing them one at a time. Sorry, I forgot to put my rubber band on the phone. As I said, I'm sitting on the end of the bed. I've basically got the cell phone sitting on the tripod, and I forgot to rubber band it. So. But anyway, the hopper that I had loaded I already had some unique out in the powder measure in the hopper. So I was sitting there dipping it out of the hopper, weighing it out, put it in the case, seat the capsule. Found out later on, the last thing I loaded with that powder, and the reason I had unique in the hopper was I'd been loading 9mm. Well, it just so happens our 9mm load is 5.5 grains of unique. So after a senior moment, we're basically just going to run these without going through all of the hassle I know a few of you wanted to see about hand weighing charges and all that. We'll do that in another video. So anyway, let's get to this. Now, most of y'all are probably going to be running 38 special. So the overall length on these is going to be 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. You really want to watch on these about putting a heavy roll crimp. Now these old ones, I'm going to be putting a little more heavy crimp on because this is a softer plastic. The new ones, you want to start out with a light crimp, and we'll get to that in just a minute as far as catching. But this is a hard plastic. This plastic will actually shatter. You'll notice when you fire some of these. But you don't want to put a really heavy roll crimp and try to cut into the capsule. You also don't want the capsule where it's loose to where it will turn. So I think I've got my die set up pretty close. Basically, I'm just going to run them on this press here real quick, just to show the seating process. We can get into the priming and all that other stuff in another vid. So also, being 36 degrees in here, my press is a little bit stiff. My oil's congealing. And especially the new ones, when you go to seat it in the case, this is where seating gets a little tricky with these. As you can see, you can basically push it down in the case. If you're adjusting your seating depth, the farther you screw your plug down, of course, the farther it's going to seat that bullet in. The problem is you have to get your seating depth to the right depth before you can crimp it. As most of you have seen where we do the seating depth adjustment videos, when you seat a regular lead bullet, it stays to wherever you put it. These, because these loads are made for a specific amount of powder and a specific overall length, well, sometimes they will pop back up out of the case. So you really don't want to over flare your case mouth. You want it just enough to where you can start it in the seater. Hopefully I didn't over crimp this. And of course we can't see it in the video, but take this glove off. I'm done filling with lead. And that will not twist. So there is a good and loaded cartridge. Also, this press does not like Tull primers. That's all I had. So let's try the blue and see if it works the same. And as I said, you can tell here, That's something you have to watch out for. You don't want it going too deep, but you also don't want to crimp it before you get it to the right seating depth. So as I said, there's where you have to play with it a little bit sometimes. Measure your overall length before you set the crimp. And I guess I should have checked the first one before I ran this second one, because I just guesstimated at the seating depth. But let's see what we have. .512. That's probably just a hair long. But since these are a specific gun, I'm not going to worry about changing it, because I know they're only going to be shot in one gun that has a long throat. So if you're going to be loading them for in general, if you're going to be loading them for different revolvers, stay to the recommended overall seating length. J-frames. You will see the end of this capsule at the very edge of the front of the cylinder. So anything over 1.5 inches in a J-frame will lock up the gun. As I said, 1/1000th of an inch or so is not going to hurt in the one I'm shooting them in, or excuse me, he will be shooting them in. So but that's how you do it. And there's what I have left of the antiques. So much for saving them for posterity. But you do what you have to do. So again, and for the record, in case you're wondering, the 38 capsules come 50 to a box. 44s you want to watch, because you only get 25 to a box of 44s. So just so you know, if you're a 44 fan or 45 long Colt fan, be aware you might need more than one box. So again, basically it's one of those things that you want to try out a few, pattern them in your gun, see what your patterns are at different yardage. I know buying these things already loaded, they're ridiculously expensive. Don't know how much they are now. The last time I looked, I believe they were about $12.95 for 10. You know, $1 a piece. The last time I checked the price on the empty capsules, they were $7.99 for a box of 50 and 38, $7.99 for a box of 25 and 44 or 45 LC. At that price, you can play around with them. I really recommend trying to do some penetration tests if you're planning on using these for snake defense. You really want to test out your penetration. I recommend probably a 7.5 if you're going to be doing it for snakes. The reason I run 6s, anything over the size of a mouse, I know they call it rat shot, some people call it snake shot, but basically anything over 7.5, if you're shooting at a rat, all you're going to do is piss it off. So that's just something to be aware of. So if you're going to do this and you're going to load these, again, stick to the recommended loads. Putting more powder in does not help. It's actually detrimental. You're not going to get more velocity. You're just going to get a crappy shot spread. So that's the video on shot capsules, and we'll go from here.